अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाज़रीन, मैं हूं क्या सलीम मीर। उम्मीद करता हूं खैरियत से होंगे, दुनिया के जिस कोने में होंगे। इमरान रियाज, जैसा कि आप जानते हैं, पूरा एक माह गुजर गया है और अदालतों में इंसाफ मांगने जाते हैं तो जज साहिबान जो उनके वालिद की हालत देखकर वो रोने लग जाते हैं। मतलब जिन लोगों ने इंसाफ करना है वो भी रो रहे हैं। ये केस इस तरह का हो गया और वो इतने मजबूर हैं, क्या कह सकते हैं। दूसरा जो सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट चीज़ है वो ये है, कुछ दिन पहले ये ख़बर आई थी और मैंने रिपोर्ट भी किया था इंटरनेशनल मीडिया से, और सहाफ़ियों का कहना था, उन्होंने खदशात का इजहार किया था कि खुदा न खास्ता हो सकता है इन्होंने इमरान रियाज को मार दिया है। और अभी 2 दिन पहले फिर दोबारा इंटरव्यू एक प्राइवेट चैनल है उस पर उन्होंने दिया और इस बात की तस्दीक भी की उन्होंने कि ये कंफर्म्ड है। देखें, बहुत सी चीज़ें आपके सामने हैं। 1 माह तक किस तरह इस चीज़ को मतलब छुपाया जा सकता है, मैं ये समझता हूँ पाकिस्तान की तारीख़ में जर्नलिज़म में सबसे पहला केस ऐसा है। और जो चीज़ें सामने आ रही हैं उसके मुताबिक तो यही समझ आता है कि मेरे ख़्याल से उनको शहीद कर दिया गया है। अल्लाह ना करे ऐसा हो, हम हज़ार दुआएं करते हैं। और उसके बाद जो सबसे ज़्यादा मुझे तकलीफ़ है वो इस चीज़ की है कि आप मेन स्ट्रीम मीडिया को देखें, कोई एक चैनल ऐसा हो जिसके ऊपर इस वक्त इमरान रियाज के लिए कोई एक खबर भी चल रही हो। अब आप खुद बताएं, जब हम लोग ये कहते हैं कि मीडिया जो है वो पाकिस्तान का बिका हुआ है और इशारों पे नाचता है, तो फिर इसके लिए इन लोगों को तकलीफ़ नहीं होनी चाहिए, क्योंकि इमरान रियाज की सबसे ज़्यादा फॉलोइंग है, ये आप लोग बहुत अच्छी तरह जानते हैं। लेकिन कोई खबर नहीं है। लाजमी सी बात है, मना किया गया होगा कि इसको रिपोर्ट ना करें आप, और उनकी भी मजबूरी है, उन्होंने अपने चैनल तो नहीं बंद करवाने। एनी हाउ जी, ये जो सहाफ़ी हैं इन्होंने फिर दोबारा वो बातें की हैं, वो मैं आपके साथ शेयर करता हूँ और आप सुने और दुआ करें कि ये जो खदशात हैं ये गलत हों और अल्लाह उनको अपनी बीवी बच्चों से दोबारा ला के मिलाए, क्योंकि इमरान रियाज जो है वो एक बाप भी है, एक खामद भी है, किसी का बेटा भी है। तो जुल्म का बदला जब इंसान खुद नहीं ले सकता, अगर अपनी ज़ुबान नहीं खोल सकता, तो फिर जो कुदरत इंतकाम लेती है वो फिर अगर लोग भुला के बैठे हुए हैं तो उनको याद रखना चाहिए कि बड़े बड़े फ़िरौन भी आए हैं, गुज़रे हैं, और किस तरह उनकी मौत हुई है वो भी याद रखें। ये जो सहाफ़ी हैं जी, इन्होंने इंटरव्यू में क्या कहा है, ज़रा इनकी बात गौर से सुने।
Well, there have been a lot of rumors since his disappearance, and there's a reason for that. We have no credible news from the authorities in Pakistan. So I would say that there is only one fact we can build things upon, is the fact that we still don't know. That's a fact by itself. One journalist has been missing for 1 month. The police claims they don't know where he is. We try to mobilize civil society, international civil society, and there is still no news. So, of course, from that we can build hypotheses. I believe that our call to ask for his release, for information about him, might have prevented him from being killed, but still we don't know. We have no clear fact on which we can build things upon. I think there are two areas where we can fight. Press freedom and democracy are a fight. No matter if you are in a so-called liberal democracy in the West, or a democratorship in some other areas, or even in China, democracy is a fight. Press freedom is a fight. Given the Pakistani context, you have to be careful. You know, every day we deal with journalists who come to me and say, my house have been searched last night, or people from abroad would tell me their family have received a visit from the military. This is always the case. So caution is the first thing. But then caution doesn't mean that you have to deny your own freedom to speech and to report and to inform your fellow citizen. So one thing is to maybe use the freedom of speech that you can find in foreign countries to maybe open the eyes of Western media, so that, as Dr. Pirzada has said, they wouldn't just repeat the old narrative of the establishment. Another area I think that needs to be explored is the role of social platforms, and I mean web tech giants, Western tech giants. They, as you said, when Twitter received a notice from a government about a tweet that was with which the government was unhappy, they would very easily go on the person who published the tweet, no matter if it's journalistic, that it's sourced or everything. They would just erase it, and then you have to go through a whole process to get your account back and everything. We are advocating for more transparency and responsibility from the big tech platforms, Twitter, Meta, mostly, because they are complicit in authoritative government censorship, and that's not acceptable for companies who clearly have a responsibility. They're not just a tube. In this, they have a strong responsibility, and that's why we would like them to be more transparent with their algorithm. We have, like at RSF, we have some projects. One is called a Journalism Trust Initiative, to ask tech companies to include into their algorithm the journalistic process of newsmaking. So that's a solution, but my advice for Pakistani journalists would be, one, to be careful. We don't want journalists to end up in jail or in worse situations. But this doesn't mean that they have to renounce to their freedom of speech. So it's a thin line. It's a very thin line, but that's how you have to deal with authoritative regimes like the one that is happening in Pakistan. Listening to you, there is one thing that came to my mind, is the role of civil society. I believe I have an outside look, but I was in Lahore last autumn, just when Arshad Sharif was murdered. But I can testify that civil society in Pakistan is is booming. It's very interesting. And you mentioned the total impunity for crimes committed against journalists. We have our Reporters Without Borders have a partner in Pakistan, which is Freedom Network, an NGO that just celebrated its 10th birthday. Its 10th anniversary last month, and they help us a lot to monitor all the crimes committed against journalists because of their work and the level of impunity for these crimes. I think if we take the rate of impunity for crimes against journalists, we are close to 96%. So it's almost, there are maybe one crime have been solved in 20 years. Well, we have to be always very careful with comparisons. We have a saying in French, which is, comparison is not reason. I don't know if you can translate that. Every country has its own history. I don't think you can compare the situation in Pakistan with the one in Afghanistan. And the role of the military in Pakistan, in Thailand, in Myanmar is very strong, but in very different ways. In Myanmar, well, if we take Myanmar, for instance, Since the 1960s, there has been this ruling junta who eventually gave up some of its power in 2011. And there has been a real democratic transition during a decade until the last coup in 2021. But I mean, the junta in Myanmar is extremely violent and relentless, which is not the case in Pakistan. Pakistan military is kind of ashamed of its wrongdoings. They are not very comfortable with what they do.